Or
We had talked about whether we're going to do workshops or add something to QLS, a module on it, so we can dive into people's whys and help them get them in the mindset of refining their why. Because most people's whys, they don't know what their why is. We've had some associates come in and they are clear on their why. My kids are young. I want to be around, watch them grow instead of putting in 12, 16 hours a day working. And that's a pretty strong why. But beyond that, what would you do with your kids? Where would you go? What would your lifestyle look like if there were no limitations?
welcome back, everybody, to Real Estate Junkies Coast to Coast. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham, on the West Coast. It's a little bit chilly, and we got Rick on the East Coast, right? Hey, Rick.
It was 15 degrees this morning, so I think your chili wasn't as chilly as ours.
15 degrees. Yeah, our chili was mid-50s, and we were cold. But yeah, so Rick, you're out in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Awesome stuff. Welcome. Again, we're a mindset, skill set, system, the three pillars of our business. And again, it doesn't have to be real estate, right? It could be anything, right? Any business that you have, you're going to have a strong mindset. You're going to have your systems, and you're going to have a skill set. Those three, if you don't have one of those, it's almost like that Venn diagram, right? That we call it smart, being wicked smart in the middle. But one of those out of the Venn diagram doesn't work, your success levels, you being successful is not necessarily going to be there. Let's talk. So today, Rick, in the community, the Wicked Smart community, we're leaning towards mindset, right? Because I think a lot of the associates in the community, they get a little, if they don't get a deal, they tend to wig out a little bit. So talk about in the mindset, we try to get to their why. Like why? Yes, why? Okay, I want to be financially independent. Okay, but why? Right? So talk about that, and then what we're going to do in the future as far as that, the why project.
Yep, so important. It couldn't be more important than that. That's the glue that holds everything together, really.
Yeah, so describe, because you've done some exercises with some associates on the why. So describe what that looks like, and then what we're going to do in the future.
So the way I usually address it is to look at all your values that your life revolves around. What is the center of what makes you happy and what makes, whether it's family and spiritual, health, whatever, it's all different areas. So it's not just one area.
Mhm.
Once you do that, then you say, okay, why do you want to do this? And a lot of people, especially, I just want to diversify. That's not going to be a strong enough why, especially when you go through hard times, and you will. It's not easy. It's very lucrative, but it's not easy. So I remember way back when I started in the business, and Steve Murnick in Warren, they said, why do you want to, what's your why? And I said, well, I want to leave my W-2 because I'm getting up there and was concerned about retirement and having financial security. Why? And pretty soon it was like, what do you mean, why?
Stop asking me. He's talking.
And then it came down to, what does your perfect day look like? What does your perfect life look like? And in detail, to the point of, what does the air smell like? If you, for instance, let's say you want to travel the world with your family to different countries, where specifically do you want to go? How long do you want to go? What if you had no time restrictions on that? What kind of food would you eat? Restaurants would you go to? What kind of shopping would you do? How does it feel? How does it feel to be able to provide that for your family? So it's really drilling down into it and designing that perfect life and not putting limitations on it. When you realize what you have in your hands, it totally opens your eyes.
Yeah, I like that. Not putting limitations on what you foresee in the future. We talk about scarcity versus abundance, right? And if you think scarcity, you say your why is, I just want to be financially independent. That's scarcity, right? You're talking abundance. It's sitting on the beach with Mai Tai, with the wind blowing in your hair. What does that feel like? What does the taste of a Mai Tai taste like? So you're getting when them Chris talks about pulling back the layers of the onion, right? So you get that first layer, but then you just want to keep pulling back until you just get that really strong why. And that's going to help in your business, because This is, like you said, it is lucrative, right? We're going to talk about lease purchase in a second, and lease purchase is just a $10 consideration. And then you get a down payment from the tenant buyer. And I'm going to talk about my lease purchase. So you pay $10 for consideration and you get hypothetically $50,000 for a down payment. The return on money, return on investment is pretty lucrative. However, it's hard. Terms is not easy. And we see it right in the community where they get frustrated because they're not getting a deal. They keep getting turned down. It's these sellers, if you think about it, terms, they're like, what is term? They're just so used to the traditional way of doing things, which is you hire an agent and you let the agent sell your house for you, and then you pay the agent a fee, and then you're done. It's clean. It's not always clean, but so they're so in that wedge of, okay, this is how it's done, where we're on the outskirts. This terms, lease purchases, owner financing, sub to AO. These are foreign concepts to sellers. So we're more educated, right? So we got to educate them more. That's why sometimes when we talk to somebody, sometimes it takes 6, 7, 8 months in order to maybe get that deal back because they haven't sold it traditionally with a realtor and they're getting frustrated. So they're like, hey, okay, let's try it your way. So yeah, mindset is huge as far, and especially in terms, talk about what we're going to do in the future, maybe doing some workshops. I think you said that off camera, but what are some of the things that
We had talked about whether we're going to do workshops or add something to QLS, a module on it, so we can dive into people's whys and help them get them in the mindset of refining their why, because most people's whys, they don't know what their why is. We've had some associates come in and they are clear on their why. My kids are young. I want to be around, watch them grow instead of putting in 12, 16 hours a day working. And that's a pretty strong why. But beyond that, what would you do with your kids? Where would you go? What would your lifestyle look like if there were no limitations?
There you go. Yeah, I like that. And let's backtrack. You said QoS. Maybe some of the people that are listening have no idea what QoS. It's a quantum leap system. It's a home study course on terms where if you go into the show notes, there's a link there that you can click on that and you can purchase the QoS system that we went through. You can try to do it on your own, right? You can buy QoS and try and do terms on your own, or you can hire a coach, one of me or Rick, and we can walk you through the process and get you more deals rather than maybe no deals because you're trying to do it on your own. Yeah. So maybe some modules in QoS, maybe a workshop where we spend, because we have a mastermind every Thursday. So maybe we spend just a full mastermind just talking about like how to, because we ask the students, what's your why or why you're here? It's very generic, right? It's not, like you said, we don't go into deep detail on what their why is. And quite frankly, a lot of them don't know how to go that deep. And so I think this is important. What you're suggesting is a workshop where they can watch these videos and do the exercise. And maybe now we have a community where we're going after it, right? And any bump that happens in the road, they're able to overcome it because they have this why, that they've thought about.
A perfect example, it took me 15 months to get my first deal. Most people would have quit, but I had a strong enough why to get through that.
Yeah. And mine was a year. It took me a year to get my first deal. It took me a year and a half to get my first sold. At any point during that time, I could have just stopped and said, this sucks. And you and I both really had secure jobs.
Yeah.
I was a teacher. I would have to do something really stupid to get fired. So I could have quit at any time. I said, I'll just go back to teaching. So yeah, good stuff. And we've had Jessica Johnson on, and it was right after she had that, I don't want to say a mental breakdown, but I think she spoke to you. She spoke to a couple of other coaches, and we dug into her why, and then she able to bounce back. And then all of a sudden she's got 3 deals right after that. Just man.
Yeah. And I can remember specific examples exactly where I was when I was talking to an associate and trying to help their why, because they were consistently going to everything, attending to what they needed to do and doing accountability, everything that we teach them to do, but there was something missing. And I worked on their whys, and you can see exactly when they hit their why, because all of a sudden it's like a springboard for them.
Yeah. Super important. Some stuff. So that's our warm mindset, and really digging into your why. And again, if you want more of that, you can join the community and we can help you with that. Let's pivot, Rick, to our game plan. The game plan this week is lease purchase. We haven't talked about that in a while. I mentioned it earlier. It's a $10 consideration fee, and it's basically, we're getting the house under contract. That's called a lease purchase with the option to buy. So we have the option to buy it. Now, people get confused with the option. What if you don't buy it? We do. We're going to buy it. It's just, it protects us, right, at the end of the day. Describe a lease purchase. It looks like you're going to say something else, but go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a misperception out there from sellers who are not educated. When you say lease, they automatically equate that to renting. And they say, I don't want to rent it. It's not a rental. You have to distinguish tenant buyers, which is a lease purchase, the way we do it, versus renters. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, completely different. We can get into the buyer side at a later time, but we're actually the buyer. We're the tenant buyer. We're just subleasing it to a future tenant buyer, someone who's going to get a mortgage and pay it off. But we're the tenant buyer contractually. We're the tenant buyer. And just like it says, we're a tenant and we're the buyer. We're not renters. It's not like first and last month's rent and stupid things like that. Because renting has a negative connotation to it, which is, oh, they're going to trash the place or they're going to squat, or that's not our case. Yes, it's a lease. There is a lease agreement for sure, but we're buying the house, right? And we're going to treat it, because why would we trash our own house? It doesn't make sense. But describe a lease purchase, like what it looks like. And then maybe why would someone do that? Why would they wait for the money?
Well, the lease purchase, we're locking in their equity. We're not talking the price. We're locking in their equity. If there's a mortgage on it, say $100K, and let's say they've got a $400K home, their asking price, you're locking in the $300K. And a lot of times in talking to sellers, you can say, regardless of what happens in the market, your equity's locked in.
Yeah. I like to say we're protecting it.
Yeah.
And again, there's no commissions or fees. 100% of that $300K that you're talking about is guaranteed to them on or before the term that we talk about, right? So what are we doing with a lease purchase? So we agree on a price, we agree on the equity that we're going to pay out. So keep going with the lease purchase.
And we're going to agree on a term, whether it's 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. Depends on the seller situation. And of course, we always design a deal around the seller's needs, as long as it still works for us. And you're making sure you're paying the mortgage on their behalf. We're not taking over the mortgage. We're paying it on their behalf and taking care of the taxes and the insurance and any maintenance and repairs. So it's hands-free for them, especially if maybe they were a landlord or something like that. Or we could go to an AO, which we can discuss on another show. Yeah. Which is just an AO is a shorter term lease purchase.
We don't make as much on that one because we're not in the middle. I like what you said as far as we're making payments on their behalf. How I describe it is we're servicing the loan, right? And for those of you, we're going to pay, we call it an authorization release. So the seller gets an authorization release, which gives us the authority to log into there and pay the mortgage company directly. Is there times where we pay the seller and then they pay the mortgage? We don't recommend it.
I've done it, and it happened to work out in my case.
Okay. So you've done it where you pay the seller and the seller, because not that we don't trust the seller, we trust ourselves more than we trust, because technically if you pay the seller, let's say the PIT is $2,500, you give the seller $2,500, they technically could just keep it and then not pay the mortgage, and then they go into foreclosure and we don't know, right?
You put your buyer at risk, your end buyer.
You're putting a lot of people at risk. We're not necessarily at risk because nothing's in our name, which is good. We do have a notice of option, which clouds the title, but I don't think legally, I'm not sure they can do anything about it. So we pay the mortgage company directly. It's a lot smoother that way. And then, unlike you said, it's hands-off for the seller. Yes, the mortgage is going to stay in their name. Yes, the title is going to stay in their name. So they do get the benefits of home ownership, right? They get depreciation. They don't necessarily get appreciation, but they do get the depreciation and the write-offs, hypothetically, because they are technically leasing their home. So why would someone do that? Why would they agree and get nothing in the beginning? Because we're not paying them, we're not giving them a down payment, we're not giving them cash flow. So why would someone just say, hey, here's my house for 3
Well,
years?
there's a lot of different reasons. They could have had their house on the market and buyers fallen through. That's one reason. Or they could have had their house on the market and it just didn't move for some reason, one reason or another. And those are two reasons. So if they just want to move the property, let's say they have to relocate and they don't want to have to deal with all of the headache of the property.
Yeah, a lot of sellers, especially in the Southern California, they have 2 homes. The ones that I speak with, it's their second home. So they don't necessarily need their money. They want to be done with the home. They don't need their money right away. So they're like, okay, let's hypothetically, let's just agree on 300,000. And then you can pay me off on before 3 years. The reason why it's attractive for sellers too is if you're selling your home for 400,000 and you have $300,000 in equity, if you sell it traditionally, someone's going to come in maybe 2% lower than the asking price, or 2% lower, 400,000, and then there's 6% transfer title, transfer fees, all that kind of stuff. So yes, you're wanting 400,000, but you're actually walking away with 340, right? So now you only have 300. What is that? 360. No. 240 in equity, not 300,000 in equity, right? So they want to maximize the amount. Again, they don't need the money. That's the key. The key is they don't need the money, and they want to be done with it, and they want to maximize the amount of money they have stored in equity. Some people say, you've had this, Rick. I can just take that money and put it into an interest-bearing account. So why would I wait?
Yep, you do get that one. But real estate, there's no better return than on real estate. And the thing is, if you look at what they're going to lose over that time period in paying commissions and lower price, whatever, or let's say the market drops, then no one's got a crystal ball.
Yeah, and you say, okay, so you lost $60,000 on fees and people coming in lower. How long is it going to take you to make up for that $60K? It's going to take you years, right? So that's why I say we're protecting that $60K that you would have lost in the beginning. We're just protecting that for 3 years. Again, over and over again. It's people that don't need their money right away and they just want to be done with the property, right? That's how I think we beat that up a little bit. So let's transition.
Yeah. The other thing is they maintain ownership of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And many times, and again, we're not CPAs, so I just want to make that clear. Many times they like to do it before 3 years because of the one-time exclusion, where capital gains purposes, right? So if you go if they don't live in that house more than 3 years, they could pay a hefty capital gains tax. But again, I'm not a CPA, so don't take my word for it. But a lot of times we like to keep it within that 36 months, just so they don't get dinged on that capital gains. And I'll talk about my deal and why we did 3 years. But let's transition to our cool down. And we both have done lease purchases, right?
Yep.
So describe your situation, your seller, and why they did a lease purchase.
My seller is in construction. He builds multiple properties, and he had this one property. It was on a main road, and it had a mobile home park. It was well maintained, but it was a mobile home park behind the house. So if you went out on your back deck, you were looking at this mobile home park.
Mm-hmm.
That turns off a lot of people. They had a convenience store next door, which I've been to. They make fantastic sandwiches and dinners. So it's not such a drawback, but he had it on the market for sale by owner and it did not move. And I suspect it was location. I put it on the market and within 30 days we had a tenant buyer. And with that, it happened to be a very young woman. She was 18 years old. She owned a paving company. And so obviously she needed time because she didn't have 2 years of income to show the lenders. And when I asked her about down payment, she said I could put down $125,000.
18-year-old.
And I'm just thinking, who at 18 has that kind of money? But she owned her own business and she did very well in it. It was her and her boyfriend at the time. And they went ahead and they purchased it. Her attorney advised her not to put down that much because the down payment is not refundable. So we agreed between us that 90,000 would be sufficient for a down payment. There you go. That's unusual payday for me. That's not your normal pay.
It's not, yeah. So just make everybody clear that was a big payday because normally we get 5 to 10% down on a hypothetical. How much was that house?
It was 679,000. It was brand new construction.
Yeah, so we're talking normally it would have been a $30,000, right? Normally,
60,000.
yeah. If we got 10%, let's go back to the seller because I think you glossed over it. The seller couldn't sell it traditionally.
Right.
Because people were just like, and probably had a crappy agent. The agent probably didn't know how to sell a house that was remote or had those type of things you were talking about. You came in and said, "Hey, I can buy it. You just need to be able to wait for your money." And they were like, "Okay."
Yeah, it was probably one of the easier deals that I've done. He was just very easy to work with. He worked very well with it.
Yeah.
And from the moment my VA called and talked to him to the time we locked it up under contract. And he had a lot of experience too as an investor builder.
Oh, okay. So he was familiar with the investment part. VA, if you guys don't know, is a virtual assistant. A lot of them are in the Philippines. So I just want a backdrop on what a VA is. Awesome. So that was a good payday for you. Did that one close out?
That one just closed out earlier this year, and the seller and the buyer were just extremely ecstatic. They were happy that everything worked out well.
Yeah. So we talked about the 3 paydays, right? So you got your payday 1, which is 90K. You got, I'm sure there was some cash flow involved. And then you got the markup plus the principal pay down. So you got your payday 3 at the end of the day.
It was a negative payday 3.
I know.
Because of the upfront, but that we can dive into that, but you look at the deal holistically.
Yeah. You look at it holistically. Overall, it was 6 figures. I would imagine. Yeah. If you want to know how all the paydays, that's something you would have to, if you want to come into our community, or you can buy the QoS system. It'll tell you how the 3 paydays work. Rick, my lease purchase was during COVID. She was a doctor. I think both of her kids have moved out. So I think there's one kid remaining. So it was a really big house for them. She didn't need the money right away because what she was going to do, she was going to, I think, rent right next to the hospital that she worked at. It'd be like an easier commute for her. So she didn't need her money right away. Perfect situation. She was a doctor during COVID. So she was very hypersensitive about people coming through her house. All right. I said, I can buy it through a lease purchase. And then if I want to find a buyer, I can communicate with you. And what I did is I gave her 24 hours notice, and then she would clean the whole house before potential tenant buyer would come through, see the house. So she didn't need her money. She was going to rent, which is perfect for us because when people say, "Oh, I don't need the money, I'm just going to go rent somewhere and then I'll buy it later." That was awesome. So again, $10 consideration fee. I got $86,000 from the tenant buyer. I too had a negative payday 3, but overall it was a 6-figure deal, right? So both of us, again, $10 consideration, and you're getting, now it's a non-refundable down payment, right? We keep it. Now let's talk about that, Rick, for a second. We don't want to go out buying Rolls Royces with these. I don't know if you get a Rolls Royce for 90K, but we're not buying Teslas. Let's use today's vehicles. So if we get a $90,000 down payment, we're not immediately going out to buy that. Why wouldn't we spend that money right away?
You want to keep some in capital reserves just in case. You just never know if a tenant buyer fell through and they defaulted. You usually have time to put another tenant buyer in there, but let's say you didn't, then you turn around and put it on the market and sell it outright. But in the meantime, you got to maintain those mortgage payments.
Yeah. So you want to plan for the worst, right? And if it doesn't happen, great. We also need to put some away for taxes, right? Because it's not tax free. Again, I'm not a CPA, but we know that if we get a payday 1, it's not realized until the house actually closes and the title transfers. So you definitely want to have a tax account where you're going to put some away in there. But once that house closes, now it's okay. Now you can do some things with it. Now you can go buy your Tesla, or you can use that money maybe for a down payment on a subject to, or again, these were $10 considerations. The money that we made was infinite. However, there are deals out there that may require some money down, right? So you just want to continue to have that money work for you. Awesome stuff. Cool. Thanks, Rick, for jumping on again. I appreciate you. What do we got next week? We have our High Six Mastermind, right? And if you guys don't know, High Six is the highest level in our community. We do a once-a-month mastermind where we just dig deep into, and we might get into what we talked about on the beginning, which is our finding out what your why is and really digging deep on that. And then we have next Thursday, the In the Trenches Boot Camp virtual, right? So we're going to be calling sellers for other associates, trying to get them appointments, trying to set up maybe some offers out there. If you want to know more about it, again, the links are in the show notes. We have our QoS Quantum Leap. And then if you want to join the community, we can have a one-on-one session if you want. All right, Rick, thank you so much for jumping on. Any parting words?
Nope, Rusty. I think if anybody wants to see the core of what we do each day, Thursday is a great time to do that. Usually our In the Trenches boot camp is 2.5 days. We're cramming it into 2 or 3 hours, but giving everybody some insight into what we do. Like you mentioned, we make phone calls for associates to leads, a little bit of deal structuring in there, and strategic planning.
Yeah, and we both have done the strategic planning where that's why we were both able to leave our W-2s. Thank you for mentioning that, because I only mentioned the one part, which is the calls. There's other parts to the In the Trenches boot camp. I will have a link in that as well. If you want to join, join the virtual event, you'll be able to click on that link and be able to join us and see what we do behind the scenes. All right. Thanks, Rick.
All right, Rusty.
Appreciate it. Catch you on the other side. We'll see you next week. All right, Rick.
Rick, so good. We'll see you.
See you, everybody. Bye.